Allison Squires holds an MSc and PhD in toxicology. She and her husband, Cody, farm near Wood Mountain, Saskatchewan, where she specializes in on-farm research. Their farm, Upland Organics, is a mixed cattle and certified organic grain farm where they manage over 8,000 acres of land made up of annual crops, tame grass and native prairie, and several high-quality crop types, including pulses, cereals, and oil seeds. Allison is also a very active member in the wider organic community, sitting on boards of COG and iFoam, and you've probably also seen her speak at lots of different conferences, sharing really great soil content. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Allison.
Well, that didn't set the pressure at all with that awesome introduction. Didn't recognize myself. Okay, 7 minutes. This is really hard to do. Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen. Good? Okay.
We can't see it yet.
Okay, you let me know. It says I'm sharing. No. How many years have you been using Zoom? Okay, now it should work. Is it looking okay?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, awesome. So don't start my time yet. I haven't started. Okay. So yeah, so my goal here today is just to give everyone kind of a way to get inspired and started on how to maybe start thinking about incorporating compost into your farm. I see from the introductions, which is great, there's lots of veggie people, so some of this stuff might be really applicable to you guys as well. We got started off pretty small and we're still not super large in terms of composting, but what you do on a small scale can also have a big impact. So I'll get into some of that as well. So we can't talk about composting without first talking about the soil food web. Sorry, there we go. Some of you mentioned this already before in the introductions. The soil food web is an integral part of any farming operation. You have to understand the different components of it, how it all works together, and just really the basic understanding behind it is that everything in it is important and everything is connected. So just getting that perspective is an important when you're going into working into compost. So I always like to start off with this slide to talk about why you would want to compost. Why would you want to invest that kind of time into that? The first thing about composting is you're generating a material that's full of biological activity. So you add that to your soil, you're going to increase the number of biological organisms in the soil. And that's really the whole crux of what you're trying to do. Once you increase the number of organisms in your soil and increase the health of the biology in the soil, you're going to notice you're going to also increase your soil organic matter. Once you start doing that, you're going to notice that your aggregates is going to start to form. Once you get good aggregation, you're going to increase your soil pore space. Once you do that, you're going to get better water and air infiltration to your soil, and then you're going to get healthier plants and better crops. And that's really what the sequence of events and how this all fits together. So you can see I've got a couple of pictures there under the healthy soil and unhealthy soil sections. The unhealthy soil is actually a picture from one of our fields, just out behind the yard site here. I've showed this picture a lot because I want people to understand that we haven't got it figured out yet, and we're still working really hard towards improving the health of our soil. And that's why we're doing all these different things that we're doing. The other picture is not from my farm at all. It's from a neighboring farm that's leagues ahead of us in their soil health journey. And so you can see the result that we might get if we keep working and going forward. So there's several different types of compost. On our farm, we don't use all 4 of these different types. So I'm only really going to talk and touch on the aerobic and vermicomposting because that's what I know the best. However, I did want to make everyone aware that there's other types such as static batch aerobic, which is more like your kitchen compost piles. And then there's anaerobic composting as well, where you purposely exclude the presence of oxygen and you get a whole different set of organisms produced with that type of composting method. So going into vermicomposting, this is how we started. The reason why I started this way is for several reasons. We're a busy farm, just like a lot of everybody else here on the call. Vermicomposting is way less time consuming. There's no turning. So you don't need to worry about going and checking temperatures and churning. It's really effective for taking care of a variety of continuous kitchen waste. So we have 3 kids, 8 and under in our house. We produce a lot of kitchen waste. I hated throwing it out. So this was a really great way to cycle that and use it for something good. If you set up your worm bin, you can also set it up so you can continuously harvest it or set up a flow through bin. And mine is just here behind me. And I'll get into a little bit about the construction of my bin in a little bit. Vermicompost is also way more ecologically diverse than thermal compost. It's just got a greater variety of organisms with the way the worms consume the starting materials and produce their poop. It's way more biologically diverse than a thermal compost. It's also really fun. Worms are awesome. There are some of us here that identify worms as being our favorite organism, and that's because they are really fun. So to get into the construction of the bin behind me, it starts off with actually just a PV Mart special shelving unit. It's really not super complicated. The shelving unit is, I think I got it on sale for $200. It's a heavy duty metal shelving unit, and we space out the shelves as you see here in the first picture, right here. So there's a little bit of a gap here. So that's where you harvest the flow through. And then we line the inside of the unit with some board, and that was so we could add puckboard to the inside. And the reason why we wanted to do this is we wanted it to be relatively waterproof, so it wouldn't degrade or erode or break down after time. So it's going to last a long time. And then we filled it with our starting materials and our worms. And after a while, we were able to do harvest compost by slicing off the bottom a few inches, and just they drop into bins underneath there. So it's really, really easy to do. It requires little to no maintenance, and it's a great way to get started. The last couple of years, we've been delving into thermal compost. This is a little bit more maintenance, and it's also a lot more expensive to get going. We lucked into getting some starting materials from a cow operation that's close by. They do custom breeding, so they corral all their cattle in during the winter. So when they clean out all of their corral system, we were able to get that material as our starting material. Then we were very, very, very fortunate to borrow this high capacity compost turner there in the bottom picture. And what that turner does is you pull it with the tractor, it goes along these big windrows of the starting material, and that picture there is after one turn. So you can see there's already a big difference between the first and the second turn. As we're turning, we're adding the water to increase the moisture content, because you want to keep the moisture content to be about 50% in these windrow piles. And you can see here, I got the truck on the side that's full of water, so we can do that. And then all of that white smoke coming out in the back is not actually smoke, it's steam. So these piles can get quite hot, and so turning them at the proper time is super important, so you don't overheat the piles, kill the biology, and make your compost less effective. Some of the things you need to know if you're going to start thermal composting is you want to start with a fair amount of high nitrogen material, so 10 to 25%. I wouldn't go any higher than that. It'll get too hot too fast. Like I said, you want about 50% moisture. And the reason why I'm highlighting that is because it's quite different from vermicomposting, which you want, like my bin here behind me is at about 70% moisture. The worms like it to be quite a bit more moist. And that's how they can remain healthy and live. If you want any compost that you're making, if you want it to be higher in the fungal populations, you want to add more carbon, and more complex carbon. So if I had my time back with those thermal piles, I would love to have added a layer of wood chips to it and then turn and incorporate that. That would have made it a lot more highly fungal. With the vermicompost behind me, I do add wood chips to that to increase its fungal component as well. So those are all things that you can do to, pardon me, to tailor the compost to be what you need it to be. To kill weed seeds, you need to have your thermal compost pile to reach certain temperatures for a certain amount of time. So either you're above 130 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 days, above 150 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 days, or above 165 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 day. Rule of thumb is you don't want it to go any higher than 165 degrees. At that point, it's getting really, really hot and you better turn it right away. Ideally, you'll turn the compost pile at least 5 times during its heating and cooling cycles, and that's so that you make sure that every part of your starting material has the opportunity to get to the middle of the pile and heat up adequately to kill those weed seeds and to kill any pathogens that might be in your starting material. And actually, some of this, just a side note, is all outlined in the organic standards as well. If you go to table 4.2. In the permitted substances list, it actually outlines some of these requirements for temperature as well. So take a look at that. So this is just a quick video that I have. So one of the things we did with this thermal compost is we hired back that same people that we bought the starting material from, and we wanted to apply it to some of our fields to see what that would look like. And you can see the beaters are going in the back here, and the compost is kind of coming out a little bit chunky, which is not ideal. You'd want it to be a lot more evenly applied throughout the field, but we actually did one field with this, and we saw a difference in the spring in terms of it greened up a lot faster. So we'd like to continue playing with this system and get to maybe apply it more evenly across our landscape as well. The major reason why we use our compost, though, is to make compost extract and compost tea. Now, compost extract is a really basic, basically you're washing your compost, you're washing all those biological organisms off your compost, putting them into a liquid form so that you can either spray it on the soil. What we do is we coat our seeds with it primarily, and I have a slide about that in a little bit. But it's not complicated to do. So the far picture is Cody's holding a handful of my finished vermicompost. I have a strainer here that I got from I'm not sure where. And we just fill the strainer with water, put it in this old rain barrel that I had saved from my days living in the city. Put it in there and just bubble the water around it really vigorously. And what that does is it washes all of the organisms off the compost. You can see the water turns quite a bit darker. Some of the humic acids are coming out as well. And so then you can use this extract in your garden. It's a great opportunity. And then compost tea is slightly different from that. Compost tea, you start again with your extracts. So you're starting with good quality compost, you wash it. But then you're also adding food items to it. So some of these food items, depending on what you add, will increase the populations of certain classifications of organisms. So really high fungal foods would be things that are like really complex. So like your fish hydrolysates, your kelps, your seaweeds, things that are really fungal friendly. If you want a higher bacteria content, you're gonna have things like simple sugars like molasses. And you can get cane sugars that are applicable to organic production that you can add to your teas, so that the organisms within the tea are always constantly reproducing and growing and multiplying. So what you might start off with a small population from your little bit of compost, you can then over the course of 24 or 48 hours, add enough food that they're reproducing and their populations are quite a bit higher by the time you use the tea. So we coat all of our seeds here on the farm, excluding the oil seeds. I would not recommend coating oil seeds. Logistically, that would be a bit of a nightmare. But we coat all of our cereal seeds and all of our pulses with our extracts. And it's not something that we've spent a lot of money on. We've got a big barrel of tea here at the top, held up by tractors, just gravity fed. I'm holding a garden hose with a little knob at the end. I'm standing there smiling at the end of the auger. We're aiming for about 5 to 7 liters of tea or extract per ton of seed. So when you're taking a handful of the coated seed, you can definitely feel the moisture. You can definitely, but it doesn't really stick together. There's definitely nothing dripping out. And what we're doing is we're coating the seed about, you can coat it a day or two before you need the seed. And I would definitely recommend at least coating it a couple hours before you put it in the seed drill. The reason being is that once the seed is coated initially, it is moist and it can cake in your drill. And we ran into that problem the first year that we started doing this. So now what we do is we'll coat the seed, we'll store it in one of our trailers for a couple hours. After a couple hours, we'll load it in the drill and we'll go. And there's no problems after that. So usually we'll coat in the morning before the day gets going, have a coffee, and then come back and load the drill and go. So trying to find my mouse here. There it is. And this is why we do it. This is what's kind of sold us on coating seed. Is in the top picture there is just a picture of seed, like when you do a normal germ test in paper towel, you soak the seed in water and see how many germinate. The bottom picture is seed that's been pre-coated with tea and soaked in the paper towel with water. And you can see there's quite a bit of difference in not only amount of seeds that's germinated, because every single seed in the tea coated sample has germinated, but also you can see it's quite a bit ahead in its growth than the non-coated seed. So there's so we're seeing a decrease in germination time, and we're potentially seeing an increase in vigor and growth as well. I took, I'm in the shop and the internet is not as good. I took a really extensive course, and if you're interested in learning more about how to make compost teas, compost extracts, you want to go Google the Soil Food Web course by Dr. Elaine Ingham. It's a 4-part course. In that course, I learned all about the Soil Food Web, how to make compost, how to make compost teas, and how to use the microscope to assess all of these different components. The microscope is a really important tool on our farm, and I use it almost daily during the growing season. You can see here, my oldest guy here is looking through it, and he's looking at a sample of compost. And what we're looking for is we're looking for evidence of all the good organisms, and we're also looking for evidence of all the bad organisms, because we don't want to see those in our compost or in our extracts. I've got on the bottom there a picture for those of you who like the fungi. The picture there, the first picture is a picture of a good type of fungus. It's dark in color, it's segmented, it's thick. The middle picture there is a picture of a nematode. It's a bacteria feeding nematode, so that's one of the good guys, and you could tell that's with its mouth parts. And then there's all sorts of other creatures in there too, with, you can see the little microarthropod there with all these little egg segments. So you never know what you're going to find. You can get lost in looking in a sample pretty easily for hours. It's really, really fun. So that's all I have. I also have more slides if there's more questions that you want to get into the particulars of some of these methods. I was supposed to only keep it to 7 minutes, so. But I'm always open for questions too. My contact information there is on the bottom of the slide, so feel free to shoot me an email or reach out in any way, and we can talk about compost and all sorts of fun stuff.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Allison. I really loved all those photos of the microorganisms. That's so great.
Thanks.
Sarah, what's Allison's time?
Well, you've overshot it by quite a bit. It's 17 minutes and 9 seconds.
Really?
I think it was well worth it.
Well, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I knew I was going to do that. Okay, well, do you get a prize for the longest presentation? Is there a prize for that?
That's a good point. We should think about that.
Yeah.